if it's okay.
Okay, I'm now streaming. I think I'll start over from scratch. It's not much point, I don't think. Oh, hi, Pete.
You alright?
Yeah, ready to see another murder investigation?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Hey? Hey?
You doing your streams?
Yes, I'm streaming. Have you found my video, Mike?
Yeah, I found it. Yeah, I just saw it. It says log, isn't it?
Yeah. Everything going alright?
Yeah, seems to be going alright, yeah. I can see everything.
Okay. Inspector Smythe is greeted at the door at 221B Baker Street by Holmes' housekeeper Miss Hudson. A consulting detective and a good doctor bid him enter. After foregoing a cup of tea, the inspector sits heavily in a sitting chair and looks to the men with anticipation.
May we be of some assistance, Inspector Smythe?
General Farnsworth Armstead, one of the 6 surviving Waterloo Tontine ticket holders, has been murdered.
Waterloo Tontine?
The Waterloo Tontine was a lottery of sorts, Watson. It was set up in 1815 to aid the veterans of the Battle of Waterloo. Wellington's victory over Napoleon.
Yes, of course, I knew that.
How many of you are familiar with the
Quite an
concept of a
ingenious plan on the
tontine?
part of the founders. £1 bought a ticket in the name of some young relative. The ticket
Okay,
proceeds
why
amounted
don't
to
you
over
take
£1
us
million.
through it?
Half went immediately to veterans and their families for medical and hardship expenses.
What became of the other half?
It all went into an account at the Bank of England, where it's been collecting interest all these years.
Very clever. And how does one win this prize?
Simply by outliving all the other ticket holders.
And now you say one of them has been murdered. Very suspicious. Who are the remaining 5?
The oldest is Captain Robert Jurgens, age 82. Then there are Nita and Claire Thomas, who are 80-year-old twins. William Rowland is 79, and Peter Dudley is 77. Poor General Armstead was the youngest at 74.
Seems as if he would have had the best chance to outlive the others.
I recall reading something in the Times about a big to-do involving the Tontine survivors on the 18th.
That's correct. The Waterloo anniversary banquet at the Langham Hotel.
Why is the name Armstead familiar?
He was a noted art collector, I believe. He also authored a well-known book, Treasures of the Conquerors.
Quite right. At the time of his death, General Armstead was working on a revised edition for his publisher, Nurgat and Company. It was to contain an entirely new chapter on a fabulous diamond called the Polar Star, which at one point belonged to Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon's brother. The general had new information which traced the gem to its present owner.
Tell me about the circumstances of General Armstead's death.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, let me see. At 10 o'clock this morning, the general's valet, David Sennett, admitted a caller to the general's study. Sennett says he did not know the man. He was elderly and spoke with a French accent. Sennett told him the general never saw anyone in the morning while he was at work. The gentleman insisted that if Armstead read the letter he had with him, he would make an exception. And so it was. Sennett took the letter in, Armstead read it, and went quite pale. He told Sennett to let the gentleman in. Sensing something amiss, Sennett dawdled in the area of the study for the next 15 minutes or so. Then he heard the distinct sound of swordplay. He tried to enter the study, but found the door locked. Then he heard the crash of breaking glass. He raced to the kitchen and out the back door to enter the study from the garden. By the time he got there, the caller had vanished. The general was leaning heavily against a shattered display case of military miniatures. Before Sennett could assist him, he dropped a saber from his hand and fell over dead.
And I take it the letter, which so upset the general, was nowhere to be found.
How long?
Correct, Mr. Holmes.
We'll see.
Well, we shall put our brains and our feet to the task.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, I just fell over dead.
Hey? What'd you say?
I was just saying, wow, I just dropped dead like that.
It can happen.
Yeah. Just drop dead like that.
It can happen. Yeah, I need to keep an eye on the comments, I think. Okay, let's see. Right. Now, who should we go see first? These detective games are good when you've got time for a reflection such as this. Don't you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I wonder if I could consider myself the detective among our clique.
I suppose you could.
I certainly like.
Forte.
I certainly like to think of myself as the pilot among everyone. When I did all those flight simulators when I was young.
Yeah.
I'd say Seb's the pilot.
Why would you say he's the pilot?
He's played a lot of flight simulators, isn't it?
Well, he's also an actual trained pilot as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, he is.
That's something I've wanted to learn.
I'm sure Seb might know a few like places you could learn at.
Detective learned that General Farnsworth Armstead, one of the 6 surviving Tontine ticket holders, had been murdered. I wonder if he had a conversation with an individual, and that individual said, "Your clownish with behaviour notwithstanding, we have both made a gentleman's agreement, and sworn on our lives to honour it. Smithers, I want that man killed." The remaining ticket holders are Robert Jurgens, Anita and Clara Thomas, William Rowland.
Jurgens.
Eh?
Jurgens.
I believe that's what it says.
Yeah.
William Rowland, Peter Dudley. Lastly, they learn that he was working on a revision to a book for his publisher and hear the circumstance of his death. I suppose perhaps forensics should be the person to speak to.
Yeah.
If I can find said, if I can find them. It's been a while since I was here.
Yeah. Be the criminology lab, wouldn't it, for forensics?
Criminology lab. What, did you see that somewhere?
Yeah, in Scotland Yard. You said you wanted to talk about.
Scotland Yard
evidence.
doesn't. Oh, let's see. Double checking, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose we can always find out. While Holmes is busy elsewhere, he sends the good doctor to discuss the physical evidence at the scene of the crime with the criminologist.
Yep.
I'm here regarding the Armstead case. I take it this is the saber he had in his hand at the time of his death?
Aye, indeed it is. A lovely thing to behold, isn't it? Unfortunately, it yielded very little evidence. The top half had traces of dust all along it, indicating it had been unused for quite some time. I did notice on the point a tiny amount of fresh blood. The general must have scratched his opponent. I'm sorry, Whitson. That's all the information to be gathered from this beautiful masterpiece. En garde!
That's Watson, sir. Watson.
Such a terrible shame that we cannot, we can't test that for blood analysis.
Yeah.
Watson visited Murray at the criminology lab. Murray explained that while dust shows the general's sword had been unused for a long time, it had fresh blood on its tip.
Huh.
Although talking with Lestrade is tedious and the inspector is condescending, Holmes and Watson visit Scotland Yard anyway, hoping the man has done his due diligence in this case and can offer insight.
Do you people have nothing better to do with your time than to interfere in police matters? Well, don't bother with this one. We have the matter under control. I've compiled a list of suspects, which you may not see. I intend to ask each one for an alibi, and the suspect unable to supply one is our killer. Quite scientific, really. Now, off with you.
I wonder if he would have had better luck with Detective Inspector Grimm from the Thin Blue Line. What do you think?
Probably.
You're going to ask if they have if they don't have an alibi, basically.
Wow.
Tell me, Mike, what were you doing when this person who you never met before was killed?
I'm not sure. I think I'm going to have to speak to my lawyer about this.
Good answer. Another answer is you can the fact that I've said this person you've never met before, I was giving you an opportunity to say, I don't know, I've never met them. Which is pretty much what any of the suspects do technically have the right to say.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Pete?
Well, pretty much the same. That's what you said.
There's someone I can be seen right now, but I'm trying to remember the name. Could be this fellow.
Can you tell us what did him in, Sir Jasper?
A sword through the heart, a smart upward thrust.
That's interesting. An upward thrust. You know what that means? Guys?
A smart upward thrust.
Yeah,
Trying to impale him or something.
presumably.
Or make it look like an accident. Like he tripped holding the sword and then went upwards, killing the victim.
Possible. Or it could mean that perhaps the murderer had to aim upward.
Well, like he was shorter.
Possibly.
Oh.
Still, they knew where to aim at the heart.
Yeah.
I suppose the next thing to do would be to see if there are any short people among this list of suspects. Let's start with Thomas and Anita Clare, shall we?
Okay.
They're in the Tontine, I believe, so that makes them... Are they? Yes, they are. They are Tontine ticket holders, so they are the likely suspects.
Would you care for some tea?
Thank you, no.
It's really quite good. We were just going to have some ourselves.
I really won't be staying long.
We get visitors so seldom.
Did you know the General?
We suppose he was at the last anniversary banquet.
But we don't believe we ever
Met him. We were so sorry to hear of
his death. It is such a pity.
Well, so, I imagine you ladies have thought about what you do if you won the Tontine money.
We have no living relatives, so there's no one to share it with should we win.
We need very little to
Get by on. Undoubtedly, we would leave it to
the Ladies' League for the Preservation of Finches.
Interesting. Well, I'd say they're probably the least likely suspects, given that they have less to gain.
Yeah.
It's them!
Unless they were vengeful and wanted to keep it out of everybody else, just to keep it out of that particular Tontine holder's hands. But they say they never met the General. Could be a lie, perhaps. Then again, given their age, it's unlikely they'd be able to hold a fight, and the General was in a fencing match. Was he not? This chap is another suspect. He's in the Tontine.
Captain, did you know General Armstead?
Armpit, you say?
Stead. Armstead.
Oh, Armstead. I knew that bloke. Jolly good fellow. Sat next to me at the last shindig back in '65. The 50th anniversary and all that rot. We had a grand old time swapping lies about our adventures on foreign shores. He swore by French damsels, but I argued for the China ladies. I hope they catch the deckrat who killed him and hang him proper.
Have you seen the General since the 1865 banquet?
I've never seen the General with a blanket.
No, since the banquet.
Oh. No.
May I ask, what are your plans for the Tontine money should you win it?
Spend as much of it as I can while I'm still alive and kicking, and leave the rest of it to the Seamen's Fund when I'm dead. Or some people think I should leave it to my only kin, my nephew, Booth Lacey. I never would, mind you. He's a bit of a laggard, has never done an honest day's work in his life. If I outlast the others and be found the next day with my skull bashed in, look to Booth. He's sure to be holding the club in his hand.
Interesting. What do you think of him? He has a cane, also not a particularly good suspect.
He's got a bit of a gruff old man, I guess, but yeah, I'd keep an eye on him.
Called
I
him,
missed most of it.
he called him Armpit.
Oh, he's a bit deaf.
I'll see if I can play it again for you, Pete.
Captain, did you know General Armstead?
Armpit, you say?
Stead. Armstead.
Oh, Armstead. I knew that bloke. Jolly good fellow. Sat next to me at the last shindig back in '65. The 50th anniversary and all that rot. We had a grand old time swapping lies about our adventures on foreign shores. He swore by French damsels, but I argued for the China ladies. I hope they catch the deck rat who killed him and hang him proper.
Have you seen the General since the 1865 banquet?
I've never seen the General with a blanket.
No, since the banquet.
No. No.
May I ask, what are your plans for the Tontine money should you win it?
Spend as much of it as I can while I'm still alive and kicking, and leave the rest of it to the Seamen's Fund when I'm dead. Or some people think I should leave it to my only kin, me nephew, Booth Lacey. I never would, mind you. He's a bit of a laggard, has never done an honest day's work in his life. Could I outlast the others and be found the next day with my skull bashed in, look to Booth. He's sure to be holding the club in his hand.
You get all that, Pete? Hey?
Yeah.
Did you get all that?
Yep. Got it.
Who's next then? Tontine ticket holder? The ride to Roland's home is uneventful, except for the part where Watson fell asleep and seemed in need of a drool cup. Sounds like Seb.
Been laid up for 2 weeks now with this blasted gout. Such a nuisance. Have to be carted about by my valet.
Perhaps you should try avoiding those rich foods.
Awfully sensible. But I always say might as well eat what you want now, because who knows what they'll be serving upstairs.
Oh, quite so.
Mr. Roland, did you know General Armstead?
Not personally. I knew of him, of course. Our little group has become quite small. Terrible about his death. Me, I hope to die at the dinner table.
Provided that doesn't happen any time in the near future. Tell me, if you won the Tontine, what would you do with all that money?
There's a question to titillate the imagination.
A great big turnip in the
I've played
country?
around with that one every day for the past 20 years.
And?
I'm still working on it.
I understand that you have 2 sons in America and a daughter in London.
That's right. My sons own a very lucrative import company, and my daughter's married to a fine lad, Wentworth Cobbett. Though he is a bit of a starving poet.
Tontine ticket holder, Mr. Dudley associates with company that is at best questionable. Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's send one of my irregulars. Roger, one of the irregulars, perks up at the mention of Mr. Dudley. It seems he knows the chap, as the two have a bit of a history together.
Ah.
Dudley wasn't at home when I got there, but the missus gave me a biscuit for me troubles. Well, that wasn't too much help.
Huh.
Now what can I be doing for you, Governor?
I'm working with Sherlock Holmes. We're looking into the unfortunate death of General Farnsworth Armstead.
Oh, of course. I've just come off a job I had. My apologies for not looking me usual spit-polished self.
Oh, don't bother, I hardly noticed.
Make yourself at home. I wish the missus were here to offer up some tea.
That's quite all right. I won't keep you long.
Heard about the general. Didn't know him, of course. Had no cause to wish him harm, Tontine or no. But I've got to look at it philosophical like. I'm the youngest now, so's I's got the best chance of lasting the longest.
So, to reflect on things. Visiting the Thomas sisters. The old ladies are leaving everything they have to the Ladies' League of Finches if they win. The captain speaks badly about his nephew Booth Lacey and says he hasn't seen Armstrong in some time. William Rowland, they learned, has been laid up in bed for the past several weeks, and he has a daughter that is married. Of course, it's highly unlikely he's going to be the killer if he's bedridden.
Yeah.
After a visit to old Peter Dudley, it is clear to Watson that the man is not a spry young man anymore, also a least likely suspect. Was there some kind of gurgling noise I just heard over Skype?
No.
Pete, was that you? Pete? Pete? Are you there?
I think he's gone.
In what sense?
Probably a lot offline, I imagine.
He's still in the call.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I could hear you before.
I'm about to check in a hotel.
Still having internet problems.
Following up on a lead and motivated by a hunch, the detectives quickly head over to the Bridge House Hotel.
How in the world did you hear about it so soon, Mr. Holmes? The body's still warm. Couldn't have happened more than 10 minutes ago.
Body? What body?
Well, the one what's upstairs in 203.
We're here for something else, actually. Looking for Pierre Martin.
Well, that's the very fellow what was done in.
Tell me, young man, do you know what transpired?
Well, Mr. Martin checked into the hotel on the 8th. He was a Frenchman. I didn't speak to him much.
Who discovered the body?
I did. Well, I came along to his room to deliver a wire. Here it is, sir.
Information still valuable. See me, Wells, Osborne, Norgate and Company, publishers. Tell me, did you see anyone suspicious hanging about?
No. No, sir. Well, actually, now that I think about it, there was a rather large man with a foreign accent. Russian, I think. He said that he wasn't sure about the address and that he'd only just arrived in London. He asked for Mr. Martin, and I sent him straight up. Well, he was rather well-spoken and well-mannered. I didn't think anything of it at the time. A few minutes later, he came down. He was practically running. I saw him go out the front door and hail a cab.
Was there anything amiss in the room?
Oh, I'll say. An inkwell was toppled on its side, left an awful mess on the carpet. Big blue spots and inky footprints right the way to the door. The manager will be in a fret when he sees it. Fortunately, there was no blood.
There, Mike.
Perhaps he was strangled.
The young hotelier. He just let a stranger come in, asking for somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, don't they have the can't confirm or deny rule this time?
Well, you'd think so, given everything we've learned from the Terminator. Let's see. Well, anyway, in either case, someone else is now apparently dead.
Wow.
Large Russian man was seen fleeing the scene. I'm sure there was nothing suspicious about that. Unfortunately, we don't know who the Russian fellow is. I do hope I'm not the only person trying to solve this. You're all welcome to participate.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to be. I'm just being observant.
Good. Mr. Eric Idler.
Oh, I wonder where that name came from.
Good question. Royal Russian Circus, Igor Khrushchev with the finest equestrian entertainment scene in London. Probably a coincidence. Something about diamonds, perhaps.
Yeah.
Can I help you, Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Cabot, I'm looking for the murderer of General Farnsworth Armstead. Where were you this morning?
You don't beat around the bush, do you?
Not if I can avoid it.
Well, it so happens I've been at home all morning.
Yes, I can see that.
Well, of course you can.
Either you've been at home all morning, or there's some other good reason why you are still attired in your bedroom slippers.
Not much help there.
can't believe we came all this way when there are more important things to pursue.
Indeed, Holmes. I don't know what got into us.
I was under the impression that was a breakthrough. Oh well. Perhaps we need a hint.
I think so.
Wherever that is.
I found the
Yeah, he's
general
head to
leaning
General
over the
Armstead
display
place.
case. He had his saber in hand, the one that usually resides above the fireplace.
I understand he was a collector of military figures.
Yes, the display in the study shows the last great British charge that swept the French from Waterloo.
Is there any significance to the fact that the figure of Napoleon is facing backward?
Oh, strange. Perhaps I should go and set it straight.
No, don't touch it. Not until the police have concluded their investigation.
Oh, yes, of course.
I also noticed the portrait over the display case.
The late Mrs. Armstead.
Do I detect a note of hostility?
I must admit we did not get on very well. But I might say that Mrs. Armstead did not get on very well with anyone, including the General.
You mean they didn't marry for love?
Hardly. Lord Fitch, Mrs. Armstead's father, arranged the match.
I'll be right back.
Her dowry was very generous. Lord Fitch would have paid any amount to ensure that he would not be left with a spinster daughter, especially such a nasty one.
If there was no love lost between them, why did he keep her portrait in his study?
Actually, it was put up there to needle Mrs. Armstead's brother, the present Lord Fitch. He never approved of the marriage. Even after her death, they were involved with mutual business affairs. They jointly owned stock or some such thing.
Tell me, do you know what the General was doing at the time the intruder arrived?
Yes, he was working on the new section of his book. The part that concerns the gem, the Polar Star. It was very interesting, really. It traces the ownership of the gem to the brother of Napoleon, to the Russian Count Rostov.
Welcome back.
Unfortunately, the gem was stolen from the Count 3 years ago. As a matter of fact, the General just received a letter from a Pierre Montan, who said that he was willing to divulge the name of the present owner of the gem for the agreed-upon fee.
Do you know where Mr. Montan might be found?
I believe he's staying at the Bridge House Hotel.
Did the General have any encounters with anyone out of the ordinary in the past several days?
Not really. An old friend of his has been in town, Jean-Paul Girard. Neither the General nor I have seen him in 40 years. In fact, they were going to meet this afternoon at the French embassy.
I'm obviously curious about the General's last visitor. Could you describe him, please?
He was an old man, a rather short fellow. He walked with a cane and carried a carpetbag.
Did he give a name?
No. He simply wanted to see the General, and he handed me a letter to take in to him.
Did you read it?
No. It was in an envelope. Rather yellowed with age. Though I noticed it was addressed in a graceful hand to Captain Armstead, 12th Hussars, the General's old regiment. When the General read it, he went very pale. Then he asked me to admit the gentleman.
Tell me, when you finally got into the room from the garden, were the study doors still locked?
Yes.
Wonder if he knew he was
I noticed
gonna
that there
die.
is an 8-foot fence surrounding the
Like
garden,
he's been someone
and that
marked
the only
him
way
for death.
into the garden or out of it is through the kitchen door or the study.
How terribly observant, Holmes.
How predictably observant, don't you mean? We're moving! Sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you. Yes, that was it. I had a bit of a theory he might have been the Russian guy.
Might have been what?
This Vladimir Botkin.
Ah.
I suppose it would be terribly racist if I started observing every person who seems to have a Russian name.
For the regiment looks like SARS, yeah.
Let's see. When in doubt, one can always check the library.
Yeah.
The librarian was kind enough to write down all the information. Evidently, tontine comes from the name of Lorenzo Tonti, the Neapolitan banker who introduced the system into France in the 17th century. The Battle of Waterloo took place on June 18, 1815. It is so named because it took place near the town of Waterloo in Belgium. The combined British and Prussian forces routed Napoleon's army, proved to be his final and worst defeat.
Dear Watson, whatever would I do without you?
Heaven only knows, Holmes.
That name seems familiar. Oh yes, works for the papers.
Ah.
The good general married into a considerable fortune when he took Lord Finch's spinster daughter Mary off his hands. Mary's brother, the present Lord Finch, was opposed to the marriage from the very beginning, and there was still considerable friction between him and the general. But through holdings which the general inherited from Mary, he and his former brother-in-law were in business together. Ah, the ironies of life, eh?
Why do you think Malcolm Fitch was so opposed to the marriage?
Well, I'm not sure, but it had something to do with the general's reputation with the ladies. Of course, this was before my time. Now, I'm not certain he can be of any help to you, but you might want to check with my illustrious predecessor, Mr. Lloyd Shoemaker.
I'll make a note of that.
You know, of course, the general wrote a book about art collectors and included some less than chivalrous details about how a few of them had come by their collections. One man, Carson Cabot, a gem collector, was quite incensed by being so named. In fact, he accosted Armstead and fractured the general's collarbone.
Wow.
I understand that the general was going to include a chapter on the Polar Star diamond in his revised book. Would you happen to know if Cabot had anything to do with that particular gem?
Well, I can't be certain, but being the collector he is, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't already have it in his possession.
Langdale Pike told us you might be able to help us.
And how is Langdale these days? Has he lost his job? Or perhaps you're here to tell me that he's succumbing to some rare disease?
Oh, heavens no. You'll be happy to know he's in the very pink of health.
Oh, I'm sure you have no idea how that makes me feel.
Mr. Shoemaker, the reason we're here is to ask about General Farnsworth Armstead and the circumstances of his marriage to Mary Fitch. Have you any recollections that might help us?
Ah, Miss Mary Fitch. As I remember it, Lord Fitch was in a dither to marry off his daughter. Auction off might be more appropriate, actually.
And Armstead was the highest bidder?
Suffice it to say that despite a reputation as a randy dandy, Armstead's career prospects were bright, and that seemed to be enough of a recommendation for Lord Fitch. The girl's brother was very much against the match and did everything he could to break it up. Soon after the engagement was announced, Armstead went on a tour of duty in France, where he had an affair with a young French girl. She became pregnant with his child.
How positively scandalous.
Wow, bit of a playboy then, this General Armstead.
So it would seem.
Yeah.
bloody shame it was about General Armistead's death.
How touching, Shinwell. You're really grieved to see him pass on.
Well, sure, I had me money on him. I should have trusted me instincts and gone with one of the ladies.
Captain Jurgens doesn't seem to have had much of a following, even at 25 to 1.
Nah, that's just Booth Lacey and his cronies, and that's really a sentimental bet. You see, Jurgens is Lacey's uncle.
Nothing there we didn't already know, I suppose.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should have a chat with this Lacey fellow.
What did you discover, Watson?
He wasn't in, Holmes, though his landlady suggested we might try the Red Bull Inn. The woman practically talked my ear off, went on and on about how Lacey constantly plays up to his uncle, Captain Jurgens, who's one of those old gents with the ticket in the tontine. I thought she'd never hush up.
Red Bull Inn, eh?
Do they drink Red Bull in there?
I'm fairly certain they only drink Tizer.
I was wondering if you'd seen a Mr. Booth Lacey around here today.
Nope. Must be my lucky day.
Well then, if it's your lucky day, why not spread some good cheer in the form of a pint and some food to that unfortunate chap standing outside your door? Poor bloke is missing an arm and a leg.
That poor bloke's your one and only Booth Lacey. Well, the whole thing's an act. He's as normal as you and me. Spends half his time begging out front and the other half swindling folks down at London Bridge Station.
Oh, he's a con artist. Wonder what else he is.
Wow. Definitely a character of interest.
Mr. Lacey, I see you still make your living by strapping your arms and legs behind you and fooling the poor public out of its tuppence.
Man's got to make a living somehow. What can I do for you, Holmes?
I want to ask you about the murder of General Armstead.
General who?
Really, Lacey. Perhaps you can fool some of the public some of the time, but you can never fool Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, that General Armstead.
Where were you at 10 o'clock this morning?
Where else would I be? I was at church.
You, Lacey, at church? It hardly seems likely.
I swear, at St. Mary's. They pass out soup and bread every morning at 9:30. The father will vouch for me. You can even ask him.
I may just do precisely that.
Appears he may have an alibi. Do you think it's worth going to the church?
Maybe.
Father sees Lacey every morning at the soup kitchen. We make it a regular stopping place ourselves. Yes, I suppose an irregular would know. Homeless network and all that. Okay, so Lacey is definitely not a suspect. He has an alibi. Okay. We won't bother going to see that Carson Cabot because we both know he was at home all morning. What you typing?
Oh, just typing to someone on me Facebook. That's all.
Oh. Do you know if Ollie's on Facebook right now?
Nah, not really.
I haven't been able to get hold of him on anything.
Maybe he's busy with something.
Possibly. Can't really know though.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently him and Seb are going to and me are going to go into Birmingham tomorrow. For his birthday.
I suppose you could tell him to call me when you get while you're there, could you? Want to talk to?
We could.
Want to talk to him about Comic-Con?
Yeah, no worries. I'll ask him and get him to call you.
Thank you. Maybe some light can be said about the Pierre fellow at the French embassy.
Oh yeah.
Farney and I spent over a year quartered together in France in War College. We became the best of friends.
Did you know much of the General's personal life at the time?
He always put the rest of us to shame in the matters of love. Said it was because we had no horse face to spur us on.
Did the General have a passion for horses?
Mon Dieu, no. He was engaged to a terribly unattractive woman by the name of Mary Fitch. Behind her back, that's what he called her. Horseface.
How dreadful. Whatever became of her?
She eventually became Mrs. Armstead and brought her great fortune to the marriage. I believe that Farney looked upon his stay in France as his last great fling.
Are you saying that there was no particular woman at the time?
I did not say that. There was one, but I never met her. My little flower, he called her. I remember one night he could not sleep. He was slightly drunk, and he kept rambling on about promises that must be kept and promises that couldn't be. Finally, he collapsed on the bed with such sadness in his eyes I will never forget it. Ma Fleurette, he said.
How very touching.
Have you seen much of the General over the years?
We have always maintained our friendship through correspondence, until last week, that is. It was the first time we had seen each other in over 40 years. We had supper, and then went to see the French actor Philippe Arnaud perform. The General commented that my presence beside him while French was being spoken reminded him of the old days.
So your visit went well?
Exceedingly well.
Can you think of anything that might have been troubling him?
No, the General was in excellent spirits. He joked about the upcoming Tontine celebration at the Langham, and he was very enthusiastic about the new information concerning the Polar Star. In fact, this week he was supposed to meet with a countryman of mine about it. It is hard to believe that my good friend is gone.
To recap.
Yes.
The detective met with Jean-Paul Gerard at the French embassy, where they learn of Armstead's marriage to Mary Finch at the General's liaison with a young girl decades ago. They also find out that the previous week the two old friends saw a play headlined by the French actor Philippe Arnaud.
Ah.
Perhaps this fellow could be our next stop.
Philippe Arnaud.
What do you think, Pete?
You what?
What do you think about all this?
Sorry, I missed.
You may have to rewind the video a bit, might you? You want some time to catch up? Pete?
Yeah. Rewind the video.
I'm just gonna get something to eat.
Okay.
I'm just gonna mute my mic because there's something going on downstairs.
You're gonna mute Mike?
Oh, something's going on in Pete's house.
Oh. Hey, is it good?
No.
Well, hope everything will be alright. Now, if you need to say anything, Pete, just leave something in the comments. You're a valued member of this team, after all. Are you still checking the comments, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, nothing at the moment, all quiet on the front.
Which front would that be? Is that the one in the west?
Probably.
Well, perhaps if we're to speak with this actor, a theatre may be the answer.
Yeah.
Oh, but you must see Philippe perform. My nephew's an artist, a wonder. He manages to portray the Emperor Napoleon from age 19 until his last days on the island of Saga. You would swear 5 different actors playing the part, but no, it is only Philippe aging before your eyes. At 48, he's the toast of the continent.
You seem rather young to be the uncle of a 48-year-old man.
I am but 8 years older than Philippe, though I can assure you I am his uncle. You might say that our family has a history of late arrivals. Philippe's father was 25 years older than myself, and Philippe's poor sister was 15 years older than he.
Why do you say poor?
She died many years ago under tragic circumstances. In fact, her mother was so upset over her daughter's death that she was put into an asylum. We received word yesterday from the asylum that she had also passed away. It upset Philippe very much, resurrecting old ghosts, as you might say. But we have been playing for enthusiastic audiences for several weeks. As we say in the business, the show must go on. And Philippe is a trooper. He would never allow it to affect his performance.
Can you tell us where Philippe Arnaud is this morning? We should like very much to meet him.
Well, he is not here now. Our company is staying at the Grand Hotel. However, I believe today he is visiting the National Gallery. But if you would come back this evening, I will have tickets awaiting, and after the show, you're welcome to come backstage and meet him.
What do you say?
I was just saying, pretty tragic of the actor losing both his daughter and his wife at the same time.
Perhaps we should try and console the man.
That's a good idea.
How fortunate that Inspector Lestrade authorized the hotel manager to allow us to search Philippe Arnaud's room.
Perhaps we can return the favor and solve a case for him someday. Today, for example. Let's look around.
How strange that a man who requires a cane would leave without it.
Perhaps he doesn't require it for walking.
Look here at the handle. Well, that could certainly give a fellow a start.
Precisely, Watson.
Oh.
Look here. It appears to be a letter.
Potential murder weapon.
It's quite old. It's addressed to Captain Armstead, 12th Hussars. Shall I read it?
Please do.
Dearest, how I hated you for leaving me, but the child, our child, eased my heartache and muted the hate. Now my sweet baby is dead. How cruel that the innocent must suffer for the sins of others. Now I have nothing. Now I am nothing. I cannot bear the pain. Goodbye, I love you still, Fleurette. How tragic. Why, perhaps this is the very letter that the General read.
Good thinking, Watson.
Here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah?
I'm thinking that the actor's late sister might be the young girl the General kept talking about.
Oh. That's an interesting twist.
Died under tragic circumstances, and the General, he was kept up at night by memories of the poor young woman. We also have a letter, which is probably the letter that was shown to the General, and also a potential murder weapon.
Oh, so somebody trying to silence a potential scandal.
Peter's apparently left us.
Oh.
I do like the sword cane, don't you? There's a form of elegance to it.
Yeah, there is actually, yeah.
It probably wouldn't work in real life, but I wonder if you could take a Gandalf approach to a metal detector with a sword cane. Just act all enfeebled, and when they ask to take it away because there's some metal in it, and you say, "Oh, you wouldn't part an old man from his walking stick, would you?"
Probably.
Well, I doubt that would work in real life.
Yeah.
I did like Liam Neeson's performance there. Acting all enfeebled with the walking stick, and the next thing he's saying is, "The courtesy of your court seems somewhat lessened of late, Theoden King."
Don't you mean Ian McKellen?
Ian McKellen, isn't that what I said?
No, you said Liam Neeson.
Why did I say Liam Neeson?
Oh, maybe I must have heard something wrong.
No, maybe I said something wrong and not realised it.
No, could you imagine that? Could you imagine Liam Neeson as a wizard in Lord of the Rings?
Ooh, can I?
He could be one of the blue wizards.
Perhaps. Why did I say Liam Neeson? I suppose Liam Neeson does provoke some thoughts in me.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, he offered to play Ra's al Ghul in Arrow, and I believe they turned him down.
Really?
Yeah. Liam Neeson playing Ra's al Ghul from a comic book standpoint, that's something I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder how he'd say detective.
Interesting.
Well, speaking of detective, let's go on detecting. Perhaps we should try and find out who the Russian chap is.
Yeah, that could help us. That could help things.
Count Rostov, Watson.
Count Rostov, Holmes?
According to the woman at the embassy, he is the only Russian national who has arrived in London in the past few days.
But how will we find him?
He's staying at the Kaiser's Royal Hotel.
However did you deduce that, Holmes?
Elementary, my dear Watson. I asked.
You can ask. Well, Count Rostov. If he was the only national, then he must be the Russian who was at the hotel where that chap was killed.
Indeed.
Staying at the Desca Royal Hotel, eh?
Are you from the police?
Were you expecting the police?
I was. My valet, Vladimir, reported to me that his interview with Pierre Martin was decidedly unproductive, as he was dead when Vladimir arrived.
I see. Tell me, Why did he go to see Martin in the first place?
It was in reference to a certain valuable possession of mine that was stolen some years ago by Pierre's brother, Andre. I was in Paris and I read in the London Times that General Armstead was to revise his very interesting book to include a chapter concerning that possession. Originally, I came here to visit him.
Then, how did you discover Martin's whereabouts?
Shall we say, someone made me aware that Martin was also in London, that he was the general source of information.
Informant.
But when the General Armstead was reported dead, I had no other alternative but to pay a call on Martin. So I sent Vladimir, an old man's legs, you understand, to speak with him.
I suspect my first choice of Vladimir probably was the Russian man.
Yeah.
Where did I find that guy? Oh.
This seemed to be a dead end. No one had any information that could help us solve this case.
So he could very well be up and gone, and he's apparently an anarchist.
I see.
General Armstead's book has been a very controversial subject from the start.
I understand the original publication caused quite a stir among the public.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, you know, of course, that many of the treasures listed in the book had in fact been stolen by their present owners. That revelation caused quite a sensation, and we were delighted. The more libel suits that were pressed against us, the more the book sold.
May I ask why the General chose to revise an already successful book?
There was one piece of critical information missing from the first edition. It was the whereabouts of a fabulous diamond called the Polar Star.
Seems to be a very popular gem.
Indeed. So you can imagine his excitement when last March he received a letter from a Frenchman by the name of Pierre Martin, who claimed to know where the diamond was. He had even provided a detailed description of how the gem was stolen from its last known owner, a Russian fella, a Count Rostov. He said the thief was an Englishman.
Might you know his name?
Martin wouldn't tell unless we paid. As I understand, he was in town a day or so ago and had tried to set up a meeting with the General. Unfortunately, I don't believe they had a chance to meet.
Really? It's a pity that thing... 290 points.
Yeah, hold on, I'm just gonna go on for me. I'm just gonna give someone a call, I won't be long.
Alright, I'm just gonna think about things.
Okay. Hey Helen, it's just me, Michael. I noticed that we're both on shift tomorrow morning. Is it okay if I could do it with you? Thanks, bye.
You probably should have turned your mic off, Mike.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's gone off live.
Alright, I'm sure. Yeah, okay. To be honest, I don't know where it is on my phone. No, not my phone, my computer.
Ah. Well, you can always unplug your mic, can't you?
No, it's actually It's actually something built into my laptop.
Oh.
Yeah.
If I'm not much mistaken, I believe there's a button entitled FN on your keyboard.
Oh yeah.
If you hold that down and find the F key on your keyboard that looks like looks relating to your mic or your sound, you can probably alter it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I used to. Hey?
I'll keep that in mind, thanks.
Well, you can try testing it now if you want, I don't mind.
Okay. Oh, hold on, there's a mute thing for Sky.
That could be your volume or it could be your mic.
Yeah, I found the mute button on me Sky.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, there's no other Vladimir in this in the directory.
Right.
So we have no choice but to assume that this Vladimir Botkin is the one who discovered the body. One could consider it a bit awkward as to why the Count has a anarchist as his valet.
Yeah. Unless, of course, they're in on something together.
I suspect Filipano won't be at home if I send someone to speak to him.
I've rung
So
the
you
bell
probably
a
have to
half
go
dozen times
directly.
and no one has come to the door.
Really, Watson? Next time I would appreciate it if you would thoroughly research your leads before you ask me to come along.
I'm fairly certain it's him.
You think it's him?
Yeah.
Oh, he's hiding.
Hear ye, hear ye. The Queen's Court now stands in order.
I see we have the pleasure of your company, Mr. Holmes. I understand you've been investigating the murder of General Farnsworth. A brilliantly logical deduction, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, my lord.
Now tell us, why was the General killed?
I believe it's to do with Arno's sister.
Now, tell me, gentlemen, what was the General trying to say when he turned round the figure of Napoleon?
I think it's more guesswork down at this point.
Rather clever of the old boy, what?
Indubitably. A man who keeps his wits about him to the last has my undying admiration.
I was wondering, just for the record, could you tell us what the General used to call his wife?
Seb, I think.
Mary Fitz. That was his wife, wasn't it?
Yes, and if we
Yes,
and if we recall, it was Horseface.
Yeah.
Well, you've done an admirable
Could you
job
imagine
in
calling
resolving this mystery.
Naming us,
I'd say you're on a par with just about any other armchair detective out there. I
Thanks.
would suggest, however, that you rethink this case again, thereby improving your sleuthing skills.
Does that mean I got it?
We must be slipping, my dear Holmes. But in any event, I'm breathing easier. At least we got our men.
I talked with Mr. Holmes about the General Armstead affair. Poor Oak, as far as clue points go. Here's how you did. You can listen to how Mr. Holmes did it, or try again, see if you can do better.
What was Holmes' solution?
You say you've come up with a solution, and yet you sit there calmly cleaning your meerschaum. Please, Holmes, tell me what you've uncovered.
Of course, Watson. It's quite simple, really. The most intriguing fact about this murder was the method. Mr. Sennett's report that he heard the distinct sound of swordplay struck me as most odd. It suggested an affair of honor. At General Armstead's home, my suspicions were confirmed. The old letter addressed to Captain Armstead, a rank he'd held some 40 years ago, suggested that it must have concerned something from the past. Something that was clearly upsetting to him. That was the reason for the duel.
But how can you be so sure there was a duel?
Simple reasoning, my dear Watson. The General had time to place his chair against the wall, climb upon it, and retrieve a saber. The murderer allowed him to arm himself. A duel is the only event that fits with the facts.
Are you sure the caller carried a sword? I thought all he had with him was a carpet bag and a cane.
Perhaps it only appeared to be a cane.
Ah, yes.
The intruder was described as an old man, yet he left the premises over an 8-foot wall. Clearly he was in disguise, and carried off the ruse with enough expertise to completely fool the General's manservant.
Actors.
The carpet bag must have been used as the receptacle of the disguise when it was no longer needed.
Positively clever of you, Holmes. But what made you think it was Arnaud?
Well, since we were looking for someone adept at the art of disguise, Gerard's mention of the actor Philippe Arnaud struck a chord. Also, Arnaud plays Napoleon. No small coincidence.
What are you getting at, Holmes?
When the General turned round at the figure of Napoleon, he was trying to tell us that his murderer was Napoleon. Or rather, the actor playing Napoleon, Philippe Arnaud.
So Arnaud killed the General to avenge his long-dead sister's honor. Ah. Yeah. Unlike most of our cases, this motive was closer to the heart than to the pocketbook.
Quite so, Watson. When Arnaud's sister Fleurette was an impressionable young girl, she fell madly in love with the dashing English captain. When he left, she took her own life.
Oh.
So pathetic.
Wait, there's more. Fleurette's grief-stricken mother went mad and was sent into an asylum.
Thus, in the twinkling of an eye, little Philippe Arnaud, who was but a child himself, lost both his mother and his sister.
It's so sad. I'm sure he was too young to understand the circumstances that caused it.
Yes, but 4 decades later it all became clear when he found a letter written by his sister. It yielded an explanation and a name. Armstead. He came to London armed with that letter, and a sword came.
But he was here for several weeks before he did the deed.
Yes, and he might not have done it at all had it not been for the news of his mother's death. That was the final blow. He went straight away to the General's home to take his revenge. Voila.
Positively brilliant, Holmes. How do you do it?
This pipe cleaner, of course.
How indeed. Well, that's the last of these games. I hope you've enjoyed watching them as much as I've enjoyed playing them. If so, feel free to play them yourself.
Thank you.
I'm Jack Yardley. I have been joined with Michael Blower. I was joined by Pete Shipley, but he has presumably left for his own reasons. I wish you all a good evening.
Okay, good evening, Jack.